Hi everyone, this is Mojax. I've got something very new and very shiny in the lab today to show you. This is the new Traktor Kontrol S4 from Native Instruments. This is not my unit. Basically, I've borrowed this from soundware.co.uk. They're my local retailer of DJ equipment and music production software and that kind of thing. So they've let me have this overnight. I've had a few hours to play with it so far this evening, and I just thought I'd do a quick walkthrough video showing you how it all works, what the functions and features are, how it compares especially to the original Kontrol S4, which has been around for a long time now. If you've used or you come across the original S4 before, this thing is not going to be a big surprise to you. It's not a huge departure. If anything, this is more a refinement of the original S4. It's not a completely different thing. That's why it's still called the same thing. Like the X1 and the X1 Mark II, they're very similar, but they are refinements and they're fitting better with the current versions of the software. So Traktor Pro and obviously Traktor DJ this now works with as well on the iPad. Okay, so let's take a look at the back of the unit then. So first of all, you've got your grounding post for your turntables. Then you've got your output section. Now this has changed somewhat from the original S4. Now what you've got here, you've got the unbalanced RCA phono outs. You've got the main out, which is on a balanced jack as well. And you've got a separate volume control here and a switch now for booth and main. So the difference being now what you can do, the original S4 never had a booth control. So what you can do now, if you switch that to main, then both of those are going to be sending the same master output, and that's controlled with a knob on top of the unit. Then if you switch this to booth, then this one becomes an entirely separate output which has its own volume control there. So what you can actually do is have independent control over these two different outputs. You can wire them how you like, really. You could have this as your main output, leave that volume set all night and just adjust the booth with the knob on the top of the unit, which would work. It depends on the setup, because obviously you've got one balanced, one out, one unbalanced. So, you've got to play with that a little bit, but ultimately, yeah, it's a lot more flexible than the previous one that you had before. Okay, so let's look at the decks then, and the actual deck control sections. Not a huge amount of changes from the Kontrol S4 Mark I, but a few that are worth looking at. So you've got your transport controls, shift, sync, and that will tell you master, Q, and if you shift that, that will take you back to the beginning of the track, play, and shift that would be key lock on and off, both of which would be displayed up there. Tempo fader is nice and smooth, no center click, and you can adjust the pitch range with the shift button there. That'll go anything between plus or minus 2% or plus or minus 100% with loads of steps in between, so you can really nail it down to your exact preference. The new button there is the flux button. That will put it into flux mode, so you can do looping and scratching, spin backs, all kinds of things, and the track will not lose its position. It will just carry on playing once you stop doing those things, which is really nice. And we've got then obviously the on air and remix and so on. So this is all same as the S4 Mark I basically. So you've got it'll tell you if it's a remix deck that's active. It'll tell you if the deck is on air. So if the fader's up, then that will light up to tell you the fader that the deck is on air. And then you've got the loop encoders here. So you've got the loop length. You go right down to 1/32. When you've got this little dot up in the corner there, that indicates that you're less than 1. So basically you've got eighth, quarter, half, 1, and then that disappears, 2, 4, 8, etc. So easily viewable from the controller. You turn that on and off like so, and that'll just do your auto loop straight on and off, and that'll flash to show you that it's looping. And then this one will do your move, so it'll move through the track depending on what you've got it set to in the software. That will move through, say, by the loop length, or you can set a specific length that you want it to move to. And again, you can activate the loops and move them back and forth through the track using that one. So again, not a huge amount to write home about for those bits, but the bit that is new is these RGB pads here. So now your cue points will light up different colors depending on what you've got active there. So in this case, we've got all just 4 regular cue points on there, but if you had a load cue point, that would be yellow. If you had a hot loop, that would be green, and so on. So you've got that at a glance, you can see exactly what's going on each of your cue points there. And then you've got the buttons for the remix slots. Now these do have a few different options you can set them to. I'm going to look at the options in the software in a little while, but the main sort of use for them is for remix slots. So if you've got remix decks on decks C and D, then what you can do is basically just play back from the first 4 slots in your remix deck. And if you've got it set to a full-on remix deck and you shift over to that, so if I go to deck D, and this is a remix deck, then each of those will light up again in their corresponding colors for each clip. And what you can do as well is you can shift and push the buttons, and you can actually go through each of the slots. So you're not stuck with the first 4, you can go right through the whole lot. what I would say is from playing with this a little bit, I would generally want to go for the an F1. If you're going to use full-on remix decks with loads and loads of different samples in them and really advanced stuff, then you really want all of those extra buttons to play with. So from my point of view, I would probably go for an F1 if that's your kind of use. Where this excels for a remix deck is if you've got obviously just a number of little loops that you want to play back, or if you want to capture live loops straight from the program. So you can actually capture loops from the deck that's playing, just hit that down and go into an active remix, into an empty remix slot, and that will carry on playing underneath or over the top of your existing track that's playing, and you can move to another track and off you go. Alternatively, you can capture from the loop recorder and so on. So that's really going to be a very intuitive use of these. As I say, if you're going to go for a full-on remix deck with like 64 different samples in it or something, yeah, just get an F1 and put that alongside, because that's going to be, it's going to offer you that finer level of control that you're probably going to want. But this will do an absolutely great job at loading up clips on the fly and actually working with them while you're playing. And obviously you've got the full 4 channels, so you've got that extra control. You can adjust the volume and the filter and the EQ for that remix deck that's playing as well. So really intuitive for that kind of use there. So that's the control section. Say not a huge amount. If you've used the S4, you're going to feel right at home, but there's a few little tweaks that are going to make it feel a bit better. We'll move on now and take a look at the jog wheels. Okay, so these are the new jog wheels on the S4 Mark II. They are immediately distinctive from the ones on the S4 Mark I, simply because they've got these aluminium tops in there now. They're also using silicon instead of magnetic sort of bearings inside there, so it's a nice smooth feel. I mean, people who I know who've had the S4s and the S2s did get on with the jog wheels. They are small. I mean, look at that on my hand, look, it's tiny. But they do have a very high level of control. They use Native Instruments' own proprietary, like HID kind of equivalent, I think it's called NHL. And so the number, you know, the accuracy of these is really, really tight. And as long as you like the feel of them, then you're definitely going to get on well with them. They feel solid enough. They're definitely not sort of tilting around and sort of wobbly plastic kind of feel. They've got the same sort of ridges as they had before on the original one. And overall, they do feel really good when you're actually controlling the deck and you want to queue up. Whether you can get on with them for scratching, that's kind of up to you. I mean, ultimately, the main thing with scratching is the response. You can scratch on anything, whatever size, as long as the response is good enough, because your hand can eventually adapt. I mean, yeah, and if you really want to go full on scratching, well, you can hook up your turntables to this or your CDJs to this, and you've got that option. Okay, so that's my first look then at the Traktor Kontrol S4 from Native Instruments, the Mark II. It is an impressive bit of kit. A lot of pro DJs use this one, or use the original, and I'm sure the upgrade is going to be worth it for a lot of people. Obviously, the one thing I haven't really touched on in this walkthrough today is the stuff with the iPad. This will integrate with Traktor DJ on iOS, and that is something quite exciting to me. The idea that you can rock up with a pro level controller like this and have your software all just in the iPad itself, that's really portable. It's going to be very cool to play with. Now I've got an S2 Mark II that's coming shortly, and I will have that for a much longer time, so I'm going to spend a lot longer on that one. I'll show you all of the iOS functionality on this. In the meantime, if you're an existing S4 owner and your current one is working well, you might not want to rush out and grab this straight away. You know, there are lots of nice little touches and refinements, but it's not huge unless you want to play with the iOS stuff. If you don't own an S4 and you've been eyeing one up for a while, now this Mark II is out, there's no reason not to just rush out and get one, because it's a good upgrade. There's nothing that's gone down in quality. The only things that have happened is improvements on there. You've got the booth output, you've got the coloured LEDs and so on. So it's all just a nice upgrade and definitely worth looking at. So keep your eye out for my forthcoming S2 Mark II video then. That one's going to be really in depth, really long. I'll probably do two, one on the iPad stuff and one on Traktor Pro 2 with it. So we'll have lots of screen grabs and lots of stuff going on with that. But in the meantime, thank you very much again to soundware.co.uk in Newcastle for loaning me this one to play with today. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope that you go and check them out if you're after any sort of Native Instruments stuff. They do all production gear and everything else as well. So big thanks to them. Thanks to you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.